Chapter 2 Looking for Captains. A couple of days later, Sitara went to meet with Captain Hana for lunch, bringing Akash, Kasumi, and Mezi along. Though Hana was not expecting a full party, he was a most gracious host as they discussed the crew's encounter with the Tato enslavers and the situation in Rakosis. The others soon realized Hana shared a long-standing business connection with their captain, as Hana referenced some kind of debt owed by Sitara. Hana told her he would consider the account settled if Sitara would garner him enough support to be chosen as the new Master of Seas, head of the Council of Captains. He believed that the support of Master Shipwright Aleem, as well as that of the daughter of Musa, the former Master of Seas, would allow him to claim that title for himself. Though uncertain of how to go about it, Sitara promised to do her best to promote Hana. Thanking him for his hospitality, the crew departed. Deciding to start with more familiar territory, Sitara and the crew met with Aleem to discover his current position with regards to the Council of Captains. After Sitara inquired whether he would be willing to back Hana as Master of Seas, Aleem explained that, as a Master Shipwright, he must remain neutral and maintain good relations with any current and potential business partners. When Aleem asked her if Hana had put her up to this, Sitara revealed he had asked her aid in seeking political backing, and confessed to having a stake in the matter. Though she had no reason to doubt Hana, Sitara admitted that, were there a reason he was unfit, or were there a more suitable leader, her own personal interest was insignificant compared to the fate of Rakosis. Aleem indicated he felt some of the council would be more fit than others to lead it, though he could not reveal their identities. He did promise to solicit an audience with them to discuss the state of affairs in Rakosis on Sitara's behalf. Aleem also informed them that Musa's daughter, Nyaja, the woman for whom the continent was named, resided within the city, while her son lived on a large farm just outside of town. He suggested Sitara contact her son for a possible introduction to the most famous woman in the world. After spending some time scouting around the city for information about the secretive Council of Captains, Sitara and Mezi uncovered the name Zaid bin Kishan Mausalkars, a captain specializing in foodstuffs who had many connections with farmers outside the city. The sailors they spoke with believed he was a member of the council. According to an impressively heavy drinker by the name of Anuj, Zaid was also connected with Hamaja Atala bin Davud el-Ghazawi, captain of the ship High Tide, and a rumored jinn-blooded.
Meanwhile, Akash and Kasumi took them on to the temple to see what knowledge the priesthood might have about the artifact. Meeting with one of the priests, they showed him the Mon and explained its inherently powerful and perhaps dangerous properties. Very intrigued by the object, the priest agreed with Akash that it was possible it was connected with a jinn, but could not say for certain without taking it to the high priest for further study. He offered to share what wisdom the jinn granted about the Mon, if they would give it to him. If what they said was true, it would be best for a potential artifact of the jinn to be in the hands of their chosen. Since Kasumi, claiming ownership, was not inclined to hand over the Mon to the temple for safekeeping, and Akash, who held a mistrust of the priesthood, was unwilling to convince his employee to relinquish it, the priest could offer no more. Leaving the temple, Akash decided he should expand his repertoire of skills and asked Kasumi to teach him the secrets of stealth. After spending the next day about town, the party noticed at dinner that someone appeared to be watching them, and a she-man who was rather ordinary save for a strong scent of sea salt. Discreetly tailing the man back to the docks, they saw him board a ship which they realized was the same High Tide they had heard of. Opting to not make a scene, the party instead returned to the Purple Lantern Inn and their ruminations. At dinner the next evening, the crew again spotted someone, a rather tall, willowy man, watching them, and followed him back to High Tide. Deciding Akash needed as much practice as he could get, Kasumi sent him to shadow the captain on their way back to the Purple Lantern. Sitara, deciding to have a little fun, snuck around behind Akash to tail him instead. Kasumi, who was following the both of them, caught up to Sitara to commiserate about his lackluster student. Making a chain back to the inn, the party settled in for the night, wondering what the coming days would bring. The next morning, Akash continued his training in stealth until Kasumi decided to give him the day off. As Akash made his way through the streets of Rikosis, he stopped when he reached into his pocket to find nothing, and he hadn't even noticed. Anxious that his normally keen senses had betrayed him, Akash found his resolve tested. Tracking down his brother to a gambling hall called the Seven-Sided Book, he confided in Tabari about how he'd been pilfered without having heard the slightest whisper of the Jinn in warning. Kasumi soon arrived and returned Akash's property, explaining he had tailed and pickpocketed Akash as a test. He apologized and expressed his concern about Akash's uncharacteristic lapse in perception. Relieved that it had been Kasumi, Akash forgave him, and they spent the afternoon relaxing with Tabari. After asking Tabari about his connections in the antiquities market, Akash and Kasumi took their leave. The pair made their way to see a sage Tabari knew about the Mon. Finding themselves at a door in a side alley, they were ushered into a small entrance room by a rather curious man with a stooped back and wandering eye. Though the sage, Mufuz by name, seemed very keen on purchasing the Mon, they agreed that the sage would keep it to study for several days, and contact them when he had divined more information. Taking hold of the Mon, the sage immediately invoked it, murmuring through his closed mouth as the signs of the Mon crept across his features. Ushering the two out of the door, Mufuz assured them that he would contact them soon.
Meanwhile, Sitara and Mezi went searching for Diallo. Finding him in the bazaar, they questioned him about the presence of Tabtoan refugees in the city. Diallo revealed that there was a significant presence of Tabtoan expatriates in Rikosis. However, they were very distrustful of outsiders. This group was led by a man named Raptus Evangelos, who, Diallo warned him, was a dangerous man that would sacrifice much of his crusade against the dictatorship in charge of Al-Kira. He cautioned Mezi that the group's approach could be extreme. Even after hearing Diallo's warning, Mezi decided to seek Raptus out in hopes of gaining allies against the military encroachment of her former home. The pair spent the evening making it known that Mezi sought to make contact with the man, with the understanding from Diallo that if Raptus wished to meet her, he would make his presence known.
That night, Sitara spotted her drinking companion Anuj stumbling back to his ship, and followed him to ask him to deliver a message to his captain. Upon arriving at high tide, the tall man who had spied on them at the Purple Lantern greeted her on the dock, and agreed to pass along a message to the captain that Sitara wished to meet with him. The following day at lunch, the innkeep, Ziad Zia, delivered a message to Sitara at the Purple Lantern that the captain of high tide would meet her at a nearby park. Ziad seemed unusually nervous, though when Sitara inquired, he was unwilling to speak of what troubled him. As he caught sight of Mezi entering, Ziad suggests Sitara make haste to her meeting.
After Sitara left, Ziad informed Mezi that a scarred man had left a message that she was to meet those she sought on the southern docks at dusk. Obviously twitchy, Ziad cautioned Mezi not to tell anyone, as his instructions were for her to come alone and unarmed. Shortly afterwards, Akash and Kasumi returned to the inn, and upon learning of her upcoming meeting, gave Mezi suggestions for how she should go about approaching her scarred contact. Deciding to scout out the area, Akash and Kasumi headed to the docks, while Mezi set out to find the captain.
Arriving at the small park, Sitara found a perfectly ordinary Ashid man who introduced himself as Amalja Atala bin Dawood el-Ghazawi, captain of High Tide. Sitara explained she had sought him out for his connection to the Council of Captains, expressing her intent to speak with them. In light of the rumors of recent Tabtoan naval activities, she hoped personally sharing her crew's experience with the slavers would help spur them towards organization and action. Considering her plea, Atala agreed to help her, on the condition she pass a test of the Jinn to prove her quest's worth. If she could sail through the maelstrom, known as Madkhal ila Abar Kayat Alar, the entrance to the Sea Lord's Hall, Atala would introduce Sitara to the council captain Zaid. Naturally, Atala would sail with them, and go through first himself to demonstrate his intentions. As Mezi arrived with Sitara's lunch, she caught the familiar gleam of adventure in Sitara's eyes as she agreed to Atala's proposition. Deciding to set sail in about a week, the captains parted ways. Heading back to the inn, Mezi filled in Sitara on the details of the meeting that night.
Deciding that it could be useful to have access to the Mon's power for Mezi's upcoming meeting, Kasumi led her and Sitara to Mufuz's home, explaining to his perplexed companions how he and Akash had lent it to the sage to study. However, when they knocked at his door, there was no answer, and they saw no signs of activity through the dingy windows. Their attempts to call out for the sage met only with silence. The party was forced to head to their rendezvous, empty-handed.
The party made it to the southern docks without incident, with Akash remaining in a nearby bar and Kasumi taking to the rooftops. Avoiding the crowds, Mezi and Sitara made their way down the docks before finding themselves alone with nothing but warehouses and empty piers. After announcing their presence, the pair was confronted by a man who bore many scars and a grudge about the fact that not only did Mezi not come alone, but she also came armed.
While the pair were arguing with the man, Kasumi kept a watch from a nearby rooftop and noticed a pair of figures on the next building over who seemed to be eyeing the meeting below with loaded crossbows. Realizing that this was either an ambush or possibly extra security, Kasumi steeled himself and prepared to launch into action should this meeting turn violent.
After Mezi set the man straight that he was not dealing with fools, he explained how they might prove their trustworthiness. In port, he said, there was a Tautoan ship by the name of Burning Brand. The scarred man instructed Mezi to steal the cargo from the ship and make certain that it never returned to his home port. Mezi balked at the idea, leading to a tense exchange.
Fortunately for Kasumi, one of the figures on the rooftop had disappeared inside, so when the scarred man brandished a knife at Mezi, and the remaining rooftop security went for his crossbow, Kasumi sprung into action. He dashed across the rooftop and swiftly knocked the crossbowman unconscious, before a loud voice called from the warehouse, ordering the scarred man to stand down. Kasumi, now feeling worried about the ramifications of his actions, moved the unconscious man out of sight of the trapdoor, and waited with bated breath.
A tall man with braided hair ending in claws emerged from the warehouse and invited Mezi and Sitara inside. They quickly realized that this figure was Raptus Evangelos when he identified the scarred man as Rudo. As the conversation continued inside the warehouse, they found Raptus to be much more soft-spoken than his compatriot, but all the more intimidating for it.
As the women were meeting the man they sought below, Kasumi found himself engaged by another warrior who had come to check on the man Kasumi had knocked out. This woman proved to be a much greater challenge than the crossbowman, and a scuffle ensued, though Kasumi was finally able to get a solid hold on the warrior woman, and send her into an unwelcome sleep.
Realizing neither of his lookouts had returned, Raptus became suspicious and sent guards to the roof. Sitara spoke up, asking if a Mizokan man were spotted on the roof, that he be escorted inside. He warned Sitara that either the Mizokan man was dead, killed by his guards, or his men were dead, in which case Sitara and Mezi would soon join them. Yelling after the guards, Sitara urged Kasumi to reveal himself. 2 guards escorted Kasumi in as the others checked on their comrades, and the party waited with bated breath. When his men reported their lookouts were unconscious but otherwise unharmed, Raptus seemed surprised at this revelation and invited Kasumi to join the conversation. As for Sitara's plan to unite the Council of Captains to help deal with the threat of Tautoan aggression, Raptus was intrigued by the idea of outsiders aiding his cause. Mezi's impassioned call to work together to retake their homeland appeared to have some small effect on a revolutionary. Making it clear that he had no use for fools or mercy, he agreed to work with the party, though he warned them to stay out of his way when it came time to deal with his foes. Over the course of the exchange, the two unconscious guards awoke. The stronger of the two, a woman named Ileana, seemed both irritated and impressed with Kasumi's skills and promised a future contest for the two of them. Satisfied that a connection had been made and uncertain where it may lead, the party left the warehouse. Collecting the cash on the way back to the Purple Lantern, they brought him up to speed, discussed recent revelations, and began drawing up plans for their next move.